Hello, and welcome to another episode of Family Talks, a resource where we interview various members of our convention family to learn how we can better do Christ's work together. Today, we have with us Mason Beuhring. Mason is a Director of Communications for the Marietta Community Foundation and is also a member at Vienna Baptist Church in Vienna, West Virginia. He is a graduate of Marshall University, as well as just recently graduated with a master's degree from Liberty University. So first of all, Mason, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And so Mason, I've asked Mason to join us today to talk to us about the topic of branding and why churches should even care about branding. And so just to start us off, just high level, what is branding? What do you mean by the term branding?
Yeah, so branding is kind of, can be traced through all our history pretty much, So when you think of the term brand, generally people think of like cattle ranchers, taking a hot iron to the hide of a cattle or a cow or some other form of livestock. And that would denote like ownership, right? So branding in history has denoted ownership, but if you go back even farther, it denotes origin. And I would even argue that in a form like we bear the image of Christ, and so we are the visual representation almost of God in a way. And so I think branding goes all the way back to the creation story as well. But in its modern sense, what it is it is a visual representation of your organization. So, and it's not just any visual representation; it's unique to your organization's goals and missions. It is comprised of multiple components, whether that be logo, tagline, color choice, font choice, different things along those lines. All of these things wrap up within our understanding of branding in modern times. But what its purpose is for people to be able to connect emotionally with your organization. So they see your brand, they have a great experience at your church or something like that. And anytime that they see that icon or logo, they know, hey, like I had a positive experience here, and this might be a place that I can trust and get engaged with. So it's basically a method. It's a visual representation that people can connect with on an emotional level as well.
Okay, so you mentioned logo, you mentioned tagline. Especially right now with COVID-19, we've seen a lot of churches begin to focus more on their online presence. And so again, right now, why should churches begin thinking about their brand?
Yeah, well, I mean, not just during COVID-19, but all the time. I think people should be thinking about their brand. Again, it is an excellent method to have people connect with your organization, within your community, or within your congregations. It can denote quality. So if you have a quality logo, and this isn't necessarily speaking in relation to churches, but if you just think of like consumer products, right? So if you look at something and you're like, hey, this is an appealing logo to look at, then you're automatically going to think, well, this must be a quality product. And so oftentimes brands, logos, different things along these lines, if they're appealing to look at, people are going to want to look at them. And so, especially within a world that is constantly bombarded with visual images all the time, branded images all the time. Like right now I'm on my front porch, and if I just look around, like I can see a Little Tykes, play toys, some strollers, some scooters. I'm surrounded by brands even when I'm outside. And so branding is a great way to allow people to connect quickly with your organization. And so, it's absolutely important.
And I've heard you use the secular example of Planet Fitness before, and I feel like that gives a great example of how we emotionally connect with brands. Can you share that example with us?
Yeah, so Planet Fitness, I think, does excellent branding. So they have, their tagline is judgment-free zone, right? And so you think of kind of the environment of weightlifting. and it's generally like a very masculine dominated sport. Not all the time, but a lot of the time. It's definitely a more masculine environment. And so you kind of have these images of these big buff dudes going and like, working out constantly and checking themselves out in the mirror. And so it's not necessarily conducive to somebody that might just be starting out. And so they take their tagline, judgment-free zone, this mission of wanting to create this environment that anybody can come and feel comfortable, whatever level of fitness you are. We just want you to be able to, we want to provide this area of fitness so you can get healthy and work on yourself. And so what's interesting is all throughout their branding, they have these subtle notes of that mission, of that judgment-free zone. And so one thing that they do to kind of take away from this very masculine understanding of what this environment might be, they actually don't use like any capitals in their branding. If you look at it, it's all lowercase, and that's very subtle. It's a very subtle detail, but it's also very interesting because generally, capitals can come off as aggressive. I mean, if you think of like a Facebook argument, somebody gets really heated, what will they do? They'll type in all capitals. And so by not utilizing capitals in their branding, Planet Fitness is subtly kind of bringing that judgment-free zone understanding or that mission statement or tagline, whatever you want to call it, and letting it kind of play out through the rest of their branding. Same thing with the logo, so a judgment-free zone, so you can come and work on yourself, right? They have the gear, showing that, you're a working machine almost, you're working on yourself. But also they have the thumbs up coming out of the gear. So as you're working on yourself, you're also being encouraged, within that environment. So it's actually probably one of my favorite examples of how branding can subtly push your mission statement in all different aspects to your consumers.
So you've mentioned logo, you mentioned tagline, mission statement. For the church that may want to begin evaluating, what they look like to the outside, we'll just use the word consumer. What are some tips that you would have for the church that is going to go back from this and just begin getting started on improving their overall brand?
Yeah, so a couple things to think of. Obviously, color scheme can communicate a lot more than you would think. Sometimes colors can actually contradict each other so much that people don't want to look at your brand. And that's never a good thing. You really want to draw people's eye towards your brand. So you want to try to come off on a color scheme that's inviting, that seems friendly, that, is appealing to look at. Another thing, simplicity is always best. Think of, probably one of the most recognizable brands in all of our entire society is Apple, right? It's two very basic shapes and it's a white logo. I mean, it's on, our watches, our iPhones, our, my earbuds that I'm even having right now, the phone that I'm speaking on. It is a very recognizable image, but it's also probably one of the simplest. Also think of like the Nike swoosh. You see that, you automatically know that's Nike. So generally, the more simple your image is going to be, the better. Two more things that I would say. Font selection is a huge one, and so it's a huge aspect of branding and something that you definitely put a lot of consideration into. Without going in huge detail, basically there's two categories of font that you can break it up. There's actually a lot more than that, but for our instances, we'll just stick with two categories. So there's serif and then there's sans serif. So serif type fonts are kind of like your Times New Roman, Adobe Garamond, different things like that. They kind of have the stems that branch off of each letter, right? These stems actually play a really important role in readability. So if you're looking at a book or a academic paper or something, that's why a lot of people prefer Times New Roman, because it's easy to read over long periods of time. Now, serifs can be really great for logos or for brandings, but it also kind of depends on what kind of demographic you're trying to appeal to. So you'll generally see serif type fonts in like law practices, banks, different things like that, like professional advisors, because serif kind of denotes like some sort of like prestige almost. Whereas the other type of font that I would say to focus on would be your sans serif. So sans is French for none. So basically no serif. So think of like taking Times New Roman and then just cutting off those stems on each side. And that's basically what you're going to get. You're just going to get basic shapes without these little stems, without these slabs connected to them. And it's a very modern approach to branding. So if you're if you're in a congregation or in a community that is, predominantly youthful, you're seeing a lot of young families kind of come into the area, then I would highly encourage you to take a look into like a modern type font, because that can really appeal to that demographic as well. And then finally, I had one more that just slipped my mind for some reason. Oh yeah. You know, I encourage churches, to be unique in their branding. I hate to say this, but oftentimes, like, just even the image of the cross might become a little bit overused. And so we kind of like to gravitate towards that, but I think that in terms of branding, it might be beneficial to take other aspects of the faith, or take other aspects of even the community, and bring those in. Not to say that you completely throw away the cross icon completely. That's not what I'm saying at all. But yeah, it might be beneficial to contemplate what is unique about your standing, what is unique about your congregation, what is unique about your community, and how can you proclaim your faith to appeal to those demographics.
So one of the things I hear you saying about our brand, whether it be our logo or our mission statement or our color scheme, is that it really has the potential of being a bridge to draw people in where we can better communicate the gospel with them. Or at the same time, a poor brand, almost has the potential of being a wall to keep people out. So my question is there a way that churches could get in contact with you in case that you wanted to, if they wanted to ask you some questions?
The best way to get in touch with me is through my email. Probably would be Mason Beuhring, MASON, B as in boy, E as in echo, UHRING @gmail.com. But people can also reach out through Facebook, or if they want to send me a text at 304-893-8420, you're more than welcome to do that as well. But yeah, I don't know if you wanted me to elaborate on that question, but absolutely, brands do have the ability to, help or hinder your mission. And so generally people like to look at appealing things, and they like to kind of disregard other unappealing things. And so like I mentioned earlier, whenever we are in a society, in a world that is constantly being bombarded visually with different images, there's very, very slight windows that we're able to capture somebody's attention. And so we want to try to, put your best foot forward. It's almost like if somebody were to walk into your congregation, you would want to greet them, very friendly, and this is a method to do that, but, kind of more on a, not as a in, I suppose, personal way. And so it's very important, to put your best foot forward. Another thing that I would also like to add before we wrap up is branding isn't just a one-stop shop. It continuously develops. You want to try to get as many touch points with people in your community as possible. Generally, people gravitate towards what they feel comfortable around. And if they're exposed more and more towards your brand, they're going to become more and more interested in seeing what that is about. So branding is constant. It's not like you just get a logo, you get a tagline. Okay, people are going to come to us. It's not. It's a lot of effort on the church's part to get engaged within the community. If you say that your mission is to reach people in the name of Christ, then you need to reach people in the name of Christ. And anytime you're doing that, you can have your brand right beside you, reinforcing that mission and helping people connect with your congregation or within your ministry.
Yeah, that's perfect. And like I said, from our perspective with the West Virginia Baptist Convention, we've worked with Mason quite a bit, and I know that I've learned a ton. Our state convention has benefited greatly from Mason's advice, and we've talked with some others too, and again, just grown tremendously from that. And so thank you, Mason, for joining us today. Thank you for just your investment. And like I said, any churches that want to improve your brand, like I said, I would highly recommend connecting with Mason. And again, Mason is just an extremely vital part of our mission of doing Christ's work together. And so again, thank you, Mason, for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Have a good day, guys.